Hey, and welcome to Plant Patterns. My name is Josefine, and today we're going to talk about sewing machines. So today I'm going to show you all of the sewing machines I own, and I'm going to tell you which models they are, how many I have, how long I've had them, etc. And I'm also going to give you some tips on choosing a sewing machine if you are looking to buy a new one. So the first machine we're going to talk about is the machine I learned to sew on, and that's my mother's machine, which is a Bernina 1008. It's a classic Bernina. It's quite old and I don't think it's sold anymore, but it's a really great machine for beginners. And we also had this machine in elementary school, or when I was having textile studies in school. 5th grade, 4th grade, etc. And we also had this machine in fashion school for the buttonholes, which is a semi-automatic buttonhole. It's like 5 steps and you have to turn a knob between the steps. So it's not a automatic buttonhole, but it's semi-automatic. So it creates beautiful buttonholes, but it's a bit of work involved. And it's a great machine. I would very much recommend it for anyone who's looking to buy their first machine. You can find it secondhand sometimes. I haven't tried any newer models of the Bernina, but the Berninas I've tried have been really good, so you never know. Always try a machine before you buy it if you can, if you have the opportunity. Yeah, so my mother had that machine, she taught me how to sew, and I mostly just experimented and made a lot of mistakes, and that's how I learned. And then when I was like 18, 19, I bought my very first of my own sewing machines, and that's this one, the Husqvarna Automatic. I will put the full brand and model name somewhere on the screen so you can see. So I've had this machine for around 10 years now, which is wild, and it's worked really well. I bought it secondhand. It was very inexpensive. That's great with these machines. It's an all metal vintage machine. It was probably made in the 60s, and it's my pride and joy. It's my favorite machine. Mostly because it's vintage and it looks really cool, but also because it's so quiet. So this machine is, it kind of purrs like a cat when you sew with it. It's not really loud like my newer machines, which is really, really nice. Everything inside and outside is metal, and everything is mechanical. So you can fix almost anything just with your hands, and it's strong, but it's not without its problems. It isn't very advanced. And my main problem with this machine was that I was not able to make beautiful buttonholes with this machine. Which, if you're never gonna make a buttonhole, like you don't want to sew shirts and stuff like that, maybe this is the machine for you. Maybe you don't need any more machines than this one. So I would say for the price that you can find this machine for, it's a very, very good machine, and it looks really nice. So I've had it for 10 years. I've only serviced it myself, which probably I should leave it to a professional sometime soon. Just thinking about how many times I've used it and how many garments I've made on this machine, that would probably be a good idea. I've had to switch out some parts in the pedal and in the cable. One day when I was sewing with this machine in the early days, when I just got it, the foot pedal started smoking. So keep in mind, if you find this kind of machine in a flea market or something, have a professional look at it before you start sewing, because some of the parts can be really, really old, and you don't want to plug something in that you don't know is working. The next machine I got, I'm just gonna tilt the camera a little bit over there, is my overlocker or serger if you're in the US. So This is a Janome My Lock 644D, and it's perfect. I've had it for almost as long as my Husqvarna. Pretty soon I realized I wanted a complement to the Husqvarna machine, and this overlocker was the natural choice. So this is not the most expensive overlocker you can find on the market. It's kind of mid-range in price. It's really good, it's a good value, and it's a normal overlocker. Not a lot of bells and whistles. It doesn't have automatic threading and stuff like that. And I've had this for, I would say, 7 or 8 years maybe. I'm very pleased with this machine. I use it for almost all the garments I make. I use it for knits, but I also use it for finishing seams on woven garments as well. And you can use a lot of different seams on this machine. I use 1 needle, 3 spools of thread. And that's because I like the skinnier overlocker seam. I probably should use a few different ones depending on the project, but I just keep the settings as they are. I might want to start experimenting a bit. So that's the Janome My Lock, and I've never had it stirred, I've never had any problems. It's just worked perfectly from the beginning, and I'm really glad I got it. So these two have been my staple, and I've used them for so many projects, and you will see me in my previous videos, I always use these two. So the third machine I got after I've had these for a while was, hope you can see here, my cover stitch. So this one I've had for 2 years. I bought it in 2020 because I thought I would need like a more professional finish to my knit projects. And this has been a pain. This machine is also secondhand. I think, yeah, the overlocker too. I bought it secondhand, but it was quite new at the time. So it feels like it was new to me, and it wasn't really used that much. But because I got it secondhand, it was a really good deal. And this one as well. This one is quite old, I think, and I've never gotten it to work properly. Every time I try to use it, it skips stitches. I've tried so many things now. I talked about this in a previous video. I experimented a lot with the tension, I switched the needles out. I've tried so many things, but I can't seem to get it to work smoothly. And quite frankly, I just use this other machine now with the twin needle, and I'm perfectly happy with it. So I think I'm actually going to get rid of this machine. And also, as you can see, I have 4 sewing machines, and I don't think I use all of them that much. Not enough to make it worth it to keep up all of this space. I think it would be better to have a computer, a space for a computer here, maybe a stationary computer, so I can sit here and work. Because right now I have to stand by my cutting table when I have my computer in here, and that's not really great all the time. So I might get rid of this. Yeah, I've got it to work a few times, and some seams look really good, but then other times it's just a hassle, and I'm quite happy with just an overlocked hem and then sewn with a twin needle. I think that looks professional enough. And also another point is I design sewing patterns for home sewers. So to me it's quite important to test everything with the same kind of machines and tools that my customers have at home. So if I only had industrial machines, like super professional factory standard materials and tools in my work, in my studio, to test all of my patterns, I wouldn't really test in the same conditions as my customer will when they purchase the product, my patterns. So yeah, and most home sewers don't own a cover stitch, and that's completely fine. And I don't think a garment looks unprofessional finished just with a twin needle. The next machine we're going to talk about is this one over here, and this is my newest purchase. This is a Singer Quantum Stylist 9960 and I have had this for, oh no, I had this for more than 2 years, because this one is 2 years, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I can't keep track. Maybe this is 3 years and this is 2 years ago. So this is the only machine that I bought completely new, and this is a really good machine. This is a Singer. It's a new kind of machine. It's completely computerized, and it has all of the bells and whistles and fancy features that my vintage machine doesn't have. I bought this mainly for the automatic buttonhole. So it has many buttonholes to choose from, and they turn out perfectly every time. So I'm really I'm really glad I bought this, and it turns out it's really nice to sew with. It's really stable, and it can handle a lot, and the twin needle seam is really beautiful on it. It works better than on my vintage machine, because sometimes the thread gets tangled up and the thread snaps on the Husqvarna, and here it just works really well. So I usually switch between the Singer and the Husqvarna when making clothes. I prefer this one for knits, because it seems to handle knit fabrics better than the vintage. But on the other hand, the vintage machine is more enjoyable to work with, and it's more quiet. So the overlocker and the cover stitch are very loud machines, and they kind of vibrate a lot when you sew, which is a con, I would say. And the Husqvarna is really smooth and nice to work with, and it's really quiet, so that's a big plus. And the Quantum Stylist is somewhere in the middle. It's really stable, so it doesn't vibrate, but it's also quite loud. So that's all of the 4 machines that I have at the moment, and I don't think I need 4. I actually don't even need, I mean, I could be fine with just the new Singer and my overlocker. And the vintage machine is, because I love it so much, it's my first one and it's beautiful to look at, so I will never get rid of it. If I were to only keep one though, yeah, I think it would be this one, but no one is making me just keep one. But this one has everything, so yeah. I would highly recommend this machine if you want a new machine, computerized, automatic buttonholes, and quite reasonably priced. I also bought this with a discount, I think, when it was on sale. So I'm really happy with 4 of my machines, but as I said, the cover stitch is probably going sometime later this year, I think. And I will make space for like a more of an office corner on this table and in this room. So talking about the vibrating thing, when I was in school we only had, when I was in fashion school and also later when I went to become a pattern maker and garment technician, we only had industrial sewing machines. So that's something you use in a factory or like a sewing studio where you take custom orders, for example, if you have your own brand. They are meant to be used 8+ hours a day, non-stop. They are very heavy duty, they can handle any material, and they are like very sturdy. So if I had like a really big space, if I have in the future maybe some employees or just a really big space, I think it would be nice to have some industrial machines, especially an overlocker, because they are so much sturdier. So I mentioned this one is kind of vibrating a lot when you go fast, but on an industrial overlocker you don't have that problem. It is very solid and you can go really quickly on it. So it's a completely different feeling. So an industrial machine is built into a table, so it's more of furniture than just a tool, and it's very, very expensive. But they also last a long time, and they're really made to be used every single day. At the moment I don't find I have a need for them, and as I mentioned earlier, I think it's a good thing that for me as a business owner designing sewing patterns for home sewers, that I also have the same tools as you have at home. So if we talk about buying sewing machines, you really have to think about what you're going to use it for. So are you mainly sewing clothes? Are you sewing mainly wovens or jerseys, or a mix between them? Are you a quilter? Or yeah. So what are you going to use your sewing machine for? And usually I will just show you here. So this machine has like so many stitches to choose from. I barely use like 10% of this, and you probably never will use any of these. You will use a straight, zigzag, and maybe a few buttonholes. That's it. I would suggest looking vintage or secondhand if you're tight on a budget, but also because the sewing experience is really, really nice with older machines. You want a machine that's completely metal on the inside. So for example, this machine is metal both on the inside and outside, versus this machine which is metal on the inside but plastic on the outside. That's completely fine. If you are buying a machine second hand, you can always lift it up. If it's really, really heavy, it's probably good. And if it's light, you might want to skip it. If the parts inside are plastic, your machine is not going to handle many layers of fabric, and it's also going to break more easily. So you want a solid, sturdy, like heavy-duty machine. Heavy-duty in the sense that it can sew through a few layers of denim, no problem, and you can fold fabric and it's not gonna have any trouble. So usually when you're making clothes, you can have quite a few layers of fabric that your machine has to go through, and you want it to handle it without breaking. You also have to think about how important it is for you for your sewing machine to be computerized, or if you're fine with like a mechanical machine. So for me, it's not really important to have a modern computerized machine. I kind of prefer the vintage one, but since this one has buttonholes which are automatic, and it has some features like automatic thread cutter, when you're finished with the seam it cuts the thread for you, which is really nice. This also tells me when my bobbin thread is running out. It kind of beeps a warning, which is also like a perk with a computerized machine. It's not necessary at all. You also have to think about your budget. I would suggest that the sewing machine is something you splurge on, but if you're going vintage, you can find really good deals. But make sure you hand over your machine to a professional for a service, especially if you find a vintage machine that you don't know a lot about. You want to check that everything is good before you start sewing. Also, if you have the opportunity to test the machine or test a few machines before you buy, that's a really good option. So if you go to a fabric shop that also sells machines, you can always ask to try them out and see which one you like the most. Because it's also very individual taste in which sewing machine you're gonna want to use. And everyone likes different features. So that's a really good idea to get the feel of what you need. And I also want to say that one sewing machine really is enough when you're starting out and for years to come. One machine is all you need, both for wovens and for knits, and you don't have to feel like you need to have an overlocker or cover stitch to make professional looking garments. You can be completely fine with just your domestic normal sewing machine. If you are trying out a machine, make sure you try a few different kinds of fabric and a few different kinds of seams to get a feel for how it feels to work with these kinds of materials, like a jersey, a thin fabric, like a slippery fabric, and something heavier. Let me know what kind of machines you have. So, are you looking to buy your first machine? Do you have a domestic sewing machine and you would like an overlocker maybe? I would recommend my overlocker in that case, but there are many other models out there. So it's Me Made May. Today when I film this, it's the same day as it's going out. It's May the 2nd. So Me Made May has just started. I will try to wear as much Me Made as I can. This dress I'm wearing today is a Betty dress from Sew Over It. The Betty pattern, just the bodice is the Betty pattern actually, and the skirt is just a gather skirt, quite long. The pattern itself has a circle skirt, but I find sometimes I don't have enough fabric, so then a gathered skirt is more realistic. So this is an old sheet, a vintage sheet, and the cardigan is also from Lisa Comfort. They don't make them anymore, but I bought a few when they were still around. Yeah. If you have any questions at all for me, just drop them down below as usual and I will answer as soon as possible. So that's everything for today. Remember to like this video and subscribe, and until next week, happy sewing!